I lived in California for, like, almost 10 years, and it's like another world. You're in a bubble just living, like, geographically in that region, and then you're in a bubble within that bubble when you're in the Hollywood film industry, so they don't realize that they're the minority. They don't realize that the rest of the country doesn't think this way. They think it's just a bunch of rednecks and, like, small towns who are like, "Oh, they're all backwards," or whatever. Most people have an ability to kind of have reason and logic. They're not as extreme as they are in Hollywood. Like most Americans, I think they said 60% of Americans identify as like independent or moderate, which is more than anybody who's far right or far left. Like most people kind of are like, yeah, I have a little bit of views on this side, but I also have some views from this side, or I could see their points, or I have friends on both sides. We're not as polarized as Hollywood thinks we are. So Hollywood thinks they're fighting this battle against I don't know, us? I don't really know who they think they're fighting, but that's why we're gonna keep getting these movies because they really think that the rest of the country thinks this way or should think this way.
I think it's the latter, as they're trying to make because culture influences politics anyway. So if
Mhm.
you if people are always consuming one type of uh entertainment and they're just being fed this stuff, they're going to start to believe that this is normal. So I think they're just trying to socially engineer people.
Even at the lo with, like, losing millions of dollars, because you think they would stop when they are
Well, you have to think about like first of all, like Hollywood is backed by China. They need that investment in order for them to release movies to the Chinese market anyway, which is a very tyrannical place as far as their government goes. So if you have that place dictating what Hollywood should be doing in their movies, otherwise they don't want it.
because you see
Yeah.
companies do it too. Like in instances where it's like they release posters or certain scenes they have to cut to show in China, they'll do it. Marvel
Yeah.
talks about like, oh, we're about race, diversity, LGBTQ.
Great story, man.
Like Star Wars has done it. Like so many,
Yeah.
like they
Like,
like
put John
they're
Boyega
not
out of that
dumb.
poster.
Yeah, it's just like I mean, they've had a scene too. It's like, oh, we made it important, for to show like two people of same sex kissing. It's like, all right, just cut it then. It's like, oh yeah, it doesn't ruin the movie at all. So they'll put that representation, but it's just like literally meaningless and easily to
Interesting.
be deleted for other markets. Because yeah, it's like Vanessa said, they bank on China hard.
Mhm.
They really
Didn't
do.
For
So
the Black Panther, the first one, for the posters, didn't they, like, cover up Chadwick
Chadwick
Boseman's
Boseman's
face?
face.
It's a movie about all black people, and this is what the
Too black.
Hollywood
Too
typically
black.
to show up at the Chinese movie theater, and suddenly they take off the mask, and they're like,
I don't want to see black.
it's the same, like, with the Pride Month stuff, where it's like in the US, they're like, "Yeah, we're so bold and in your face with pride." It's, like, interesting how you're not changing your logo for your Middle East branch of your
Yeah.
company, or you're like,
Mhm.
you're only doing it where you're gonna get points. That would actually be making a statement in certain parts of Africa or Asia or, or the Middle East, but here, it's just like they're doing it because it's safe and they're cowards.
Yeah.
Didn't that recently happen with like what was that airline? It was like Virgin Pulse, the gender uniforms.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh
so
yeah.
like they they dropped their uniform policy to was it the World Cup to a specific country that's obviously not down with that. So they
Mhm,
made the commercial, it got people like snazzy and whatnot. However,
mhm.
they canceled that to go to a specific country because they're not down with that. So they did all that virtual signaling for like no reason. It was pretty funny because they did that. So he's like, oh, anyone that has their gender identity, they can wear these uniforms. However, going to this country, no, no, we're stopping it there. It's like, yeah, virtual signaling for no reason again.
Do you think that they knew that? So that way they could be like, "We tried to implement it, but they're the bad guys." Like, like, maybe that's why, like, they know if they're putting this outlandish stuff out there, then maybe people
I
they'll
mean,
still
if they
give them
really
credit.
Yeah, I mean, if they really stood for it, then be like, "Okay, then we're not flying there then."
Yeah.
I mean, if you really wanna die on that hill, I mean, like, they know that that's not accepted by everyone, just like
Mhm.
Disney knows, which is why they make their films a certain way to cut out that stuff.
Didn't they
And
for
since they're
Spider-Man, though, didn't they change that? Where, like, they didn't bow for, was it,
yeah, no, someone in here knows it. I just don't know the last one. But yeah, the one with all 3 of them.
they China was like, "We will not show this movie if you do not cut
No
out
Way
the
Home.
Statue of Liberty." And they were like, "Oh, screw you." And I don't think they showed it in China. Like, I think they actually chose to not cut that because it's in New York. Statue of Liberty's there, and so they were like, "Yeah, you gotta cut it out." They're like, "Nah." And then they realized
I
they don't need their money. So maybe
I
maybe they did eventually do it.
Yeah, I mean, I also think like with that IP, they knew that to me, no matter what Spider-Man, that's like If everyone speculated with the 3 Spider-Man being in there, that's easily already $1 billion. And I
Right.
think at that point, we're like, we don't really need China in that instance because they knew that they were gonna make it's kind of let's just say if they include something ridiculous in the next Deadpool movie,
Mhm.
they're getting Hugh Jackman back as Logan, as Wolverine. Guaranteed that's probably gonna make $1 billion. So if there's something that China doesn't like in that, they're gonna have the same attitude like they did with Spider-Man. Because
Mhm.
they're not dumb. They know it's gonna make money. Now, if it's a lesser IP and they need all the money that they can get, if something's in the Marvels movie that China doesn't want, guaranteed they're gonna cut it because they're
Mhm.
probably gonna need more profits from China for that. Now, if it's an established IP and they know people are gonna see it, why do you think that Disney probably went to the reserves just to get Hugh Jackman? They're gonna make $1 billion off that easily because everyone's been wanting that. So I think their attitude changes depending on what the project is. If it's something that people really don't care about, they're going to cut it. I am surprised, like with Star Wars, I think they wanted to because they needed all the money they can. I mean, I still know people that hate the new ones that came out,
Mhm.
but I think with Spider-Man, it was like guaranteed everyone was going to see that multiple times over,
That's fair.
and they knew they were gonna make like with projections, they're not done with that. Even though they are done with new projects coming out and they know it's not gonna make money. I think with Spider-Man, it's always kind of like that guaranteed success.
Yeah, that's fair. So it wasn't really that bold of a move.
Because
Yeah.
Spider-Man's the only one that's like it hasn't failed them. And Sony also helps out with that too, because they're basically leasing out Spider-Man. So Sony has to work with Marvel for that. They
Okay.
don't completely own him. So yeah, that's also Sony's money too. So it's just like, hey, I guess they already knew that they were gonna make that money. Like I said, with Deadpool, which is hopefully gonna be as raunchy as the other things, not gonna cut anything because
Mhm.
people want that plus Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
Mhm.
So they're not ready for that because they're still doing it. I mean, they just did it with Wakanda, so it's like, yeah,
What
it's
did they
weird.
what did
I
they
think it
like
was
cutting?
yeah, like there was a scene that was cut. It was like LGBTQ scene that was cut. It was very quick. Like I remember
Mhm.
talking to my dad about it in the movies, but it was easily like just cut because it served no purpose. Like when I seen it, I was just like, okay. It didn't like help in the story anyway. I was kind of just like, you see this? All right, we did good.
Disney's
Yeah.
always been about, like, performative activism. Like, do you remember back
Yeah.
what was it? Was it Beauty and the Beast? Like, the live action, they're like, "We're gonna have our first gay representation," and I think it was something where, like, maybe one of the background characters, like, was a little bit
Was
fey or
it?
something, or, like, LeFou had a crush on Gaston, but it was very, like, subtle, and they were like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that. Even though, yeah. From
I don't
the
even
you
remember
said
that.
but
it
from
it
Beauty and the Beast?
it
Yeah.
was because it was so, like, not even
You
really.
looked at him in a way. It kinda like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said I didn't see it, but I seen, like, scenes of it. But I remember what's that comedian's name that played
Josh
him?
Gad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And, like, you could just see it, though. It was like small instances. Everyone's like, "Oh, you see that?" And it's just like, "Alright." Like, "Yeah, he's gay. He's gay for him." It's like it was just odd. It was just odd to put it. There was no reason for it. It was yeah, I don't
Well,
know.
they used to be so much more, like, subtle about it, but they'd be like, "Yeah, we
Yeah.
have our first gay whatever," and there'll be, like, an extra in the background, maybe holding hands with a same-sex person or whatever, and, like, now it's like, "No, we will not accept that they're gay unless they're, like, literally scissoring in the background." The thing is, I'm not against having, if it comes up in the story or comes up, naturally, yeah, reflect whatever, families or dynamics you wanna reflect, but it's kind of the shoehorning in of things that is a little bit, like, we're all kinda sick of. It's like, just show us a movie. If we wanted to be preached to, I'd go to church. Sorry. I know, sorry. That's sorry. No,
I
no,
just
no,
I'm
no.
I just
offended, okay?
I just don't think people are that talented creatively, at least were more probably young or modern writers to weave it in like they used to back then, where
Mhm.
now it sticks out like a sore thumb. And it's just like, all right, here's this great character that so happens to be gay. It's like, no, here's this gay character, this great gay character. It's just like, well, they have to be a great character first,
Mhm.
and not just because they're not great because they're gay. So
Right.
I always tell Nessa that now. It's just like it's not they writers they can't weave it in. It's just it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it looks like crap. You look at She-Hulk. I'm sorry, I know I don't write. I've never acted, never did any of that. But That's some bad writing and acting. When
Mhm.
I try to watch it, I'm sorry, it was no.
My thing with She-Hulk, I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes and then I kind of fell off because and people are gonna be like, "Oh, because she's not likable." And it's not because she's a woman, it's not because whatever, it's because she doesn't have anything, like, relatable. So,
Mhm.
we're okay with a character who's messed up if we can relate in some way, but she kinda has this, like, "I'm better than you, and the only reason I didn't get that job is because 'cause I'm a woman," kinda thing, as opposed to, like, making it more about in writing, it needs to be about the character's choices or actions. Those need to be what drive the story. And Hollywood right now, I think because all the writers are kind of in that social justice mindset of like victimization and oppression and and that their personality is their what was it? What did you say earlier? Like your deficiencies or something like the things that
They make
you,
your deficiency their identity.
yeah, they make their deficiency their identity. So like for them when they're writing, they're like, "Oh, this is personality," and it's not.
Mhm.
And that's the part that drives me nuts when people say, "Oh, these trolls are racist or they're misogynist." It's like, no, because if you ask most of the people, obviously there's some who actually are, but if you ask most of the people who have a problem with race bending or gender bending casting, they'll be able to tell you female characters that they love or black characters that they love, and it's usually because they were well-written, three-dimensional people, and it wasn't just that their blackness or their gayness or their, womanhood was their personality, because it's not. In the real world, you have a sense of humor, you have life experiences, you have all sorts of things that make up who you are, and these writers don't seem to understand what makes somebody a human? They can only see check boxes, and we're never gonna get good content until we get them to learn, like, yeah, these things are not personality traits. What else do you
No,
got?
not. I hate when you ask someone, "Tell me about yourself." "Well, I'm gay." Like, that's not
Yep.
no.
Could you imagine if that was, like, a normal thing of, like, just listing your sexual preferences when you first meet people? Like, being like, "Hi, my name
Weird.
is Brittany, and I like butt stuff." You know? Like, that's cool, like, I'm happy for you, like, what else do you got? Like, what do you like to do? What are you passionate about? Like, tell me that stuff. I don't care if you're gay, straight, I don't care if you're white or black, like, that tells me nothing about
Mhm.
you. And a lot of identity politics, they assume that it does, that somehow black in itself is an identity. It's like,
Yeah.
well, are you black and from the South? Are you black and from Rhode Island? Are you Cape Verdean versus, African American, African descendants of slaves, kind of thing. Like there's so many nuances to every single group that you can't be generalizing. All women think this way, all men are trash, all black people. It's like they don't realize how regressive their progressive ideas are. They're not progressive. Progressive would be, "Hey, we're individuals. Let's take people on a case by case basis."